This computer. Okay, Miriam.
That was the announcement. Okay. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining. So glad so many people joined, even though it's August. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Scott Harris. We were just chatting, in case you weren't here yet, about what a blessed man he is and how his wife supports his hobbies and how he's friends with his son and gets to spend some time with it and how many different hobbies he had. So right now, Scott and his wife Randy live in South Carolina. They moved there in 2020. Before that, he lived in California for many, many years and did a number of things there. Ran a business, a marketing business. In addition to that, apparently he had a backyard band, a backyard stand where his band practiced and played. They did a newspaper column, weekly radio shows, hosted Los Angeles Dodgers weekly live radio show. Wow. Um, sat on boards, et cetera, et cetera. It's a wonderful list of, hobbies that we can only aspire to, most of us. And shortly before leaving California for South Carolina, Scott was honored as Man of the Year with his company, having won Business of the Year 2 years previously. So, having retired, he then continued birding and did, rather than doing a big year and chasing all the birds that are out there, he did a Raptor Big Year, which is, I guess, the sort of abbreviated, but also probably a very exciting version of a big year, and which resulted in the book, Raptor Quest, which is about these adventures. And hopefully he'll tell us more about the book, the adventures, the birds, and possibly about his wife as well.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me here tonight. I'm really looking forward to this. I enjoyed our conversation the last 15, 20 minutes. So that was kind of a blast. So for anybody that was there for that, that was fun. Um, and this has been great. It was an adventure, and I'll tell you guys about it. And this book that you're looking at and all of the photos that I'll share tonight, those are all a result of that adventure and obviously a huge part of the journey I took. But it turns out actually the biggest part of the journey was the people that I met along the way. I was new to the birding community. I'm a COVID birder, so I started in spring of 2020, pretty much by accident, but start I did. And um, and I'll explain why I wound up writing this book, but it has been a thrill. And then one of the joys is now that the book's been out for a little bit, is that I have the opportunity to talk to groups like yours, which I do, I don't know, a half dozen times a month, I guess, and really, really enjoy it. And at the end, we'll do some Q&A stuff. So please let me know if you've got any questions when we get there. Although I imagine Mary might come back and direct that. But goodness gracious, that's my favorite part. So I'll look forward to that. Following up on what Miriam shared. My wife and I retired. We spent our whole lives in Southern California until 5.5 years ago, and then we moved to South Carolina. So we decided it was time to try a new state. And I had shared earlier that the house we're living in is on a lake in South Carolina, but we'd never been to this area of South Carolina, and we'd never been to the house. We bought it online. Turned out to have been a great thing. We love it there and have some good friends, and it's a beautiful lake, but it was, I guess, kind of high risk. And the first day that we were there, and the real estate agent was showing us the house and the lake and everything, this bald eagle that you're looking at flew across the lake, which is about 3 miles from one side to the other, and landed on this pine tree right in our backyard, right on the water's edge. Um, and I managed to get this picture, which at the time I wasn't a photographer or a birder, so it was just lucky that I got it. Um, and as I mentioned, I was not a birder, which was my bad because my wife and I had been fortunate enough to have traveled to all 50 states and I don't know, maybe 35 or 40 different countries. I can't imagine how many birds I could have seen had I been looking, or how many birds I even did see and didn't notice or pay attention to. But that's my bad and the way it goes. And sometimes actually we go back and look at old photos of trips and I'll see birds in there that I can identify now from different countries we've been to, and they actually have dates on the photos and stuff. But I don't count them because I wasn't birding then, so it didn't seem right to me. This book that I wrote, I started writing about 8 years ago, and I've published 50 some odd books. And Raptor Quest is the first in the birding world. And although I'll talk at the end a little bit about a couple more that are coming out, but I was trying to figure out what I could write. I'm not an ornithologist or a scientist, and I wanted to write something interesting that I would have fun writing, and hopefully people would have fun either reading or hearing about. I imagine a lot of you have seen the movie The Big Year, came out in 2011, and based on the book The Big Year and based on a true story. Although the movie is pretty different from real life. But I loved the movie. I didn't watch it because I had any special interest in birds. I happen to like all three of these actors. And so then when I got into birding, I discovered right away that raptors were by far my favorite. I just absolutely love raptors. And so as I was thinking about a big year and a book and all these different things, the idea came to me for what I called a Raptor Big Year, which turned out to be a really big year because it took me 17 months to find all 53 of the birds. But I did find them, so that was pretty exciting. And the reason it took 17 months was my ignorance. I did not realize how difficult some of the winter birds would be to get, especially the owls. And so I had to wait for another winter to cycle back through. And I will talk about those, the last couple birds that I was able to pick up. So I guess it could have been titled A Big 17 Months, but that doesn't have the same ring to it. One of the things that I learned when I was beginning my research, I love to do research, is that there is no generally accepted definition of a raptor. So scientists and ornithologists absolutely agree on what a hummingbird is or what a corvid is, but that is not the case for raptors or birds of prey, depending on which one you want to use, which reminds me back in 1964, Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart was asked to define pornography, and some of you may remember his answer, which was, he couldn't define it, but he knew it when he saw it. And I think that's kind of the way that it is with raptors. They do stand out as different from other birds. It's easy to confuse hummingbirds or warblers and some of the other family groups, but it is not easy to confuse a raptor with any other bird. The breakdown on the raptors, as you see on the screen, you have 3 vultures, turkey black and condor. You've got 19 owls and you've got 31 diurnals. I recognize that a couple of the owls are diurnals, but allow me that breakdown if you would. And even among this, there is still some controversy. A number of people don't believe that vultures should be included. I'm among them. If I was doing it again, I don't think I would count them, but I did on this trip. For example, Harlan's hawks, if you're familiar with them, which are a subspecies of redtail, it appears that they may break out again as a standalone species. And I say again because they have been split and lumped 3 times already over the years, and it looks like they may be split again. So that's kind of fun. Um, you look at some of the birds, like a hook-billed kite. That's more of an occasional visitor from Texas or from Mexico coming into Texas, but it does breed here on occasion, and so we count that. And then some of them, like the northern hawk owl and the snowy owl and the great grays, those are really Canadian birds, but we claim them. I mean, we're Americans, so we'll go ahead and claim those. And that is how you get to 53 raptors in the lower 48 states. If you're curious, there are no other raptors in Alaska that you don't find in the lower 48, except when they get a rarity coming across the Bering Strait or something. Hawaii has a barn owl, which is the same as our barn owl. They have a short-eared owl, which is probably going to be broken out instead of being a subspecies of our short-eared owl. It will be its own. It's purely diurnal. It hunts in the middle of the day. It has different calls and stuff, and there are people now petitioning to have it broken out. And then they do have one flat out endemic, which is a hawk on the Big Island of Hawaii, very cleverly named the Hawaiian hawk. But I was focused on the lower 48 states. I'd like to share, because I get asked pretty frequently, Um, this is my canvas, the lower 48 states. And if you 20 of the 53 Raptors have been seen in all 48 states. Now, when I'm giving these stats, I realize not everybody's a lister and not everybody eBirds, and I understand that. But so that you know, all the statistics that I use were based on eBird reports. That doesn't mean that some of these things couldn't have been seen 15 or 20 years ago, because I only went back 10 years. And it doesn't mean they haven't been seen in the 2 years since I published the book. But when this came out, this was the status. So 20 of the 53 could be found in all 48 states, obviously much more frequently in some than others. Two of them have been found in 47 of the 48 states. And the one state, and they're both missing the same state, is Louisiana. One of them is the northern saw-whet owl, and one of them is the northern goshawk, which is now the American goshawk. Interestingly enough, John James Audubon said that the first owl, the first northern saw-whet owl he ever saw was in Louisiana. So there is a report of one being seen there, but the owl experts that I've spoken to doubt that that was true, but I do not know. And the original name for that, for the northern saw-whet, was an Acadian owl, and that was because John James Audubon claimed that he saw it and painted it in Louisiana. But as you probably know, he was an unreliable narrator. So there you go. The snowy owl has been seen in 46 of the 48 states, having skipped so far Arizona and New Mexico. And 5 of the raptors have been found in 3 states or fewer. That is the Aplomado falcon, the ferruginous pygmy owl, the whiskered screech owl, the hook-billed kite, and the white-tailed hawk. And in almost all cases, the best place to find any of those 5 is in Texas. Texas is an amazing state for raptors, and all 5 of those that are found in 3 states or fewer, you can find in Texas. So that's pretty cool. This was the distribution of me. People ask about the trip, where I went and how long I was gone and all those good things. And so I wanted to share that with you. Driving was absolutely my preferred mode of travel. Anytime that the schedule allowed, that's what I did. Um, and I did, let's see if we can get this. I did 7 cross-country road trips. I did 13 round trip flights. And on those 13 round trip flights, I know that people have bad things to say about airlines, and I understand that. But because I was going to such small little places and obscure places, those 13 flights took me on about 50 different legs. And so that you know, all 50 of those flights took off on time, spread out over the 17 months, and 49 of the 50 landed on time. The only one that didn't was I was flying from Houston to Harlingen, Texas, late one evening, about 10 or 11 o'clock, about a 45-minute flight. I was going down to look for the hook-billed kite, which was the 4th time I'd been down looking for it. And we got close to Harlingen, and the pilot came on the air and he said, I got a little bit of bad news. It's really fogged in Harlingen. We're not sure if we can get under that fog. And so if we can't, we're going to have to turn around and go back. But we've got about 15 minutes worth of fuel left, so we're going to fly around a little bit and see if we can't land. Well, I mentioned I'm not a scientist or ornithologist. I'm not a mathematician or a pilot either, but I figured it took 45 minutes to get there, so 15 minutes worth of fuel was a drawback. But as it turns out, he meant 15 minutes of fuel we could play with, and he came back on a couple minutes later and clarified that, so somebody must have said anything. We were not able to land, so we had to go back to Houston, get a hotel, and get out the next morning. But I was able to catch the hook-billed kite, so that was pretty cool. I was on the road for 25 weeks. I visited 34 different states, and I traveled well over 100,000 miles. So it was a lot of traveling. These are the states that I drove to the most often: Texas and Florida, Montana, and California, and obviously all the states in between as I was driving. These were the ones that I flew to. And these were the 34 that I covered, looking for these birds. So on the driving, I was absolutely blessed. Like I said, I drove tens and tens of thousands of miles. Never had a problem, never broke down, never even got a flat tire, except one day I was in Kalispell. I'd been there since Monday midday looking for a snowy owl. And there's a little airport called the Flathead Lake Sky Ranch Airport. And the snowy owl had been reported there for a few days. So I flew out and I looked for it Monday afternoon. And Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I looked for it in the morning and the afternoon. I could not find it. Friday morning, I woke up and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna take the morning off, and I knew there was a great Raptor place about 2.5 hours away. I had been there a couple of times before, so I thought, I'll just do that this morning. So I left before dawn, got there as the sun was coming up, and I was there for 2 hours, and I literally saw 119 different raptors in the 2 hours, not counting turkey vultures. It was just an amazing couple of hours. So when I was done with that, I looked at my GPS and I typed in Manning Road, which is the main road along that little tiny airport. And it came up on my GPS and said 2.5 hours away, which was great. I hit go, turned on my books on tape, and I just, out of my ear, I would hear make a right or make a left or whatever. And I was following that, not paying attention. All of a sudden, I got in a bit of a traffic jam and I looked up, and here was this Welcome to Canada sign. And at that point, I was locked in. I couldn't get out of this line. And when I got to the front, I did not have my passport. I hadn't intended to go to Canada. And I just wanted to do a U-turn 100 yards and get back into the States. They wouldn't allow it. They spent 3 hours tearing my car apart, thinking that I don't know, somebody was in the trunk or drugs or guns or whatever. And then when I was done, I went back on the US side. These guys shared a building, told them the story, and they did the exact same thing. They tore my car apart for 2 or 3 hours. And so that was not a great stop. But the only hassle I had, I made it back, by the way, to Manning, the right Manning Road. As it turns out, there's one in Alberta, Canada that was also 2.5 hours from where I was. And that's how I screwed up on the GPS. But I got back in time. And as I pulled up with about 20, 25 minutes left before it was dark, I saw a car on the side of the road. So I pulled it behind and knocked on the window. And I said, any chance you're on a snowy? And he turned and he said, you mean this one here to the right? And there was one about 50 feet away sitting on a shed in a guy's backyard. Um, and it sat there for a while and let me take some pictures. And it was just spectacular. And then from there, I raced to the airport, caught my flight, and headed home. So that was a pretty cool deal for me to be able to do that, especially in light of the challenges I have geographically, apparently. Another bird that's not terribly easy to get on is a ferruginous pygmy owl. That's what you're looking at here. And the best place to find these in the United States is in Texas and specifically at the King Ranch. If you're not familiar with the King Ranch, it is a massive ranch spread out over Texas. It's 825,000 acres. And to give you an idea of what that means, the entire state of Rhode Island is 777,000 acres. It is bigger than the entire state. You can't go on it by yourself, but they do all kinds of things. They do hunting, they do birding, they do corporate retreats. There's a number of things that you can sign up for. But if you want to go birding, you've got to sign up for their little trip. So I signed up for a 1-day trip, and I was joined by two people, a college-age kid and his mom, and then there was the guide. So the four of us took off. We got there. We left right at dawn, and we weren't out on the property a half hour before we could hear a ferruginous. It wasn't a great listen. I mean, it was definitive, but it wasn't great. I wasn't thrilled about counting it. And then a little while later, we saw one flying by, but again, not a great look. It was clear what it was, but not a great look. And then about 2 hours later, now it's maybe 10 in the morning, we decide to stop for a little brunch. There's a picnic table out in the middle of this prairie. And as we sit down at this picnic table, I'm sitting down. We got our little food in front of us, our little packed breakfast or lunch, whatever it was. I look up and here's this ferruginous pygmy owl, 20, 25 feet away from the picnic table, just staring at us. We sat there for over 30 minutes eating, and the bird never left. It preened, it took a little nap, but it didn't move off that branch, and we got to watch it the whole time. And as you can see, get some pretty clear shots. That was a very special moment on that trip. While we were out there at King Ranch, That is where I also got my white-tailed hawk, which again is most commonly found in Texas. Beautiful hawk. And to the locals, it is nicknamed the fire hawk. And the reason for that is when you get a big prairie fire going through Texas, and of course, they burn up a lot of acres quickly, just chaparral and brush and whatnot. One of the things that fire does is kick up all the insects, grasshoppers, etc. And white-tailed hawks over the years have learned to trail the smoke in those fires, and those insects who manage to avoid the fire and get into the air find themselves being a snack for a white-tailed hawk. So the locals call it a fire hawk. And when they see those fires, they look for this beautiful bird, and more often than not, they found it. I mentioned the mother and son that I met on the van that day. The son's name was Frank Fabro. And as I was telling him about what I was doing on this trip, um, he mentioned that he was a college student out at UC Davis in California. He was studying to be an ornithologist. And he said, "Hey, if you wind up having trouble getting on a spotted owl, give me a call because last summer my internship was with a lumber company and my job was to find spotted owl nests and mark them off in a quarter-mile square so the lumber company didn't take any of the lumber from inside that quarter-mile square." And he said, "I don't work for them this summer, but I have friends there and maybe they can help us do that." So when summer came, I did. I gave him a call. He very generously agreed to meet me. It was about a 3.5 hour drive for him. And he said, "By the way, I'm going to give you GPS coordinates. You have to get there exactly because there's no cell phone service and we're going to be meeting in pitch black in the middle of a national forest in California." So we did. Fortunately, it worked out. We met. We started hiking up this trail in the dark, and then we reached a certain point. It wasn't really a trail. I guess it was a deer trail, but we hiked up this thing, and then we'd been hiking maybe a mile, mile and a half at the most. And he said, "Okay, we're gonna cut through here, and then I think we'll be able to find a spotted owl." And I looked, and it was just a solid wall of flora. I mean, bushes and trees and whatnot. And I said, "Frank, how are we going to get through this? I don't see any openings." And he reached down to his right hand thigh, and I hadn't noticed this because it had been dark. He had two machetes strapped to his thigh. So he handed me a machete, and he took one, and we just cut our way through. And we went maybe a third of a mile. It wasn't terribly far. And we came to a large opening, and there in the large opening was this spotted owl. And just like the ferruginous pygmy owl, the owl was not spooked. At this point, it was probably 8:30 or 9 in the morning. We had packed in a little breakfast, so we sat down on a couple of logs and had our breakfast and just watched this owl. And once again, got perfectly crystal clear pictures of this beautiful bird. Now, this bird did move around a little bit while we were there. It dropped down and got a mouse, and we got to see that, which was pretty darn cool. And we spent about an hour with the bird, and then when we were done, we backed out. The bird never spooked, it never left. It was really a gift. It was an absolute joy. And this is such a beautiful bird. It's a controversial bird now because there's a movement afoot to slaughter all of the barred owls that have made their way into Oregon and down into California because barred owls predate spotted owls. And so that is one of the suggestions on how to stop that. The problem with that, of course, is, and I don't understand how this is even a thought, but nature abhors a vacuum. If we slaughter all the barred owls, number one, how are the hunters really going to know the difference? But number two, once we do, more barred owls will just fill it in. They've discovered that the habitat works for them and that there is food. So we'll see what happens, but it's not unreasonable to think that in 10 or 15 years, we won't have any more spotted owls on the West Coast, which would just be a tragedy. As we were hiking out, we got to see two fledglings that weren't there when we went in, like 3 hours earlier. And Frank said that based on his previous summer, he thought both of these had just fledged that morning, that we were seeing them just an hour or two out of the nest for the first time. And they look so different. Most of the smaller birds, when they fledge, your songbirds and warblers and whatnot, they're full grown and it's hard to differentiate between them and adult birds when they fledge. But with this owl, you could clearly see the difference. Swallowtail kite, this is the first chapter in the book, and this was kind of the definitive moment when I decided to do the book. My son and I were out on the lake on a pontoon boat, and we stopped our boat and shut off the engine in the middle of the lake. It was the middle of the week, nobody was there. And we just lied down on the bench seats and lit up a cigar, and we were watching the sky. And the swallowtail kite was one of two that flew over us, maybe 20 feet over our head. I managed to snap this picture. And when we got back to the dock, I called a couple friends of mine who were birders, and it was the first sightings of swallowtails in our county. So they were thrilled. Everybody came out, and I gave them rides, and we found them again. But by the time we got back to the dock, um, we had firmed up the idea for the book and firmed up the title Raptor Quest. And so that's why I used the swallowtail kite as the first bird in the first chapter. Um, this is about an hour and a half from our house. They've just shown up in the last week. And we normally get about 25 swallowtails and about a dozen Mississippi kites. And they roost together and they hunt together during the day, and they're beautiful to watch. And another blessing, if you will. Owls were definitely the more difficult animal to find. I wound up getting 4 of them in Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. A gentleman named Scott Rashid was able to help me out there. He is an owl expert. He's published a number of books on the small owls, and one on goshawk and one on kestrel. But he has spent more than a quarter century studying these owls, the flammulated, the boreal, the northern saw-whet, and his favorite, the northern pygmy owl. And he got me visually on 3 of the 4 and got me 4 nights in a row. We heard a flammulated owl, no moon, pitch black, 10, 11 o'clock at night. We chased it around the mountainside 4 nights, but we couldn't get one. So of the 53, that's the only one of mine that is a herd only. I still have not put eyes on a flam, but I'm going back in 4 weeks to Rocky Mountain in order to try to put eyes on one. But if you're ever looking for any of these birds and you find yourself in Rocky Mountain National Park, send me an email. I will connect you with Scott, and he loves showing people owls. So he will absolutely help you do that, and happy to do it. This is a northern pygmy owl. This is not from Rocky Mountain. This is from Yellowstone. I go up to Yellowstone every January, and northern pygmy owls are there during that time. They come down to Yellowstone for the winter warmth. And this particular day, it was about minus 15 degrees. And northern pygmy owls are one of the owls that are diurnal. So they do a lot of their hunting during the day. This is probably 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And as you can see, he didn't care. I'm standing underneath him. He's about 15 feet high in this tree, in this pine tree, and didn't mind me taking pictures and stuff. And excuse my French, but those are badass little birds. This is a northern saw-whet, which looks an awful lot like a boreal. The easiest and quickest way to differentiate is with the beak. On the boreal, they're kind of an ivory or maybe even a tan, and on the saw-whets, they're black. And that's the easy identifier between those 2 birds. This one was shot at Rocky Mountain National Park, up on a hill in the middle of the night, which was kind of cool. Commissary Ridge in Wyoming. They've got a banding station there and a hawk watch. And so I wanted to go out and see that. So I drove from South Carolina out to Wyoming. I was given directions on how to get there. And so no problem getting from South Carolina to Wyoming. But when I got close, I drove around for an hour. I could not find the road that I had been told I needed to take. And I was getting a little bit discouraged because there was no cell phone reception where we were. And it was a Thursday. And I knew that the 3 people that worked the hawk watch worked 6.5 days a week. And the half day a week that they came down from the mountain was Wednesday afternoon. So I knew that if I didn't, I couldn't just wait and they would show up. So I drove around and kept expanding my drive. And finally, I found this beautiful gate, big, thick timber gate. I opened it up, let myself in, closed it, drove about 3/4 mile down a road and found about a 6,000 square foot timber ranch house, just a beautiful log house. And I went and I knocked on the door, these massive 10-foot tall doors. And I knock on the door and I wait and I can hear somebody coming and the door opens and standing in front of me, in front of these, now she's opened both doors, is this remarkable looking woman. She is not 5 feet tall. She certainly doesn't weigh 100 pounds, somewhere between 50 and 150 years old. And she looks like she's made out of leather. And she looks up at me and she says, "Are you looking for the birds?" And I said, "I am." She goes, "You know, those GPS directions never work. About once every 2 weeks, one of you guys shows up. I'll tell you what, I'll give you the exact directions on how to get there, but you got to come in and have a sandwich and a glass of water first." And so I did. Sat down, talked to her. She was actually selling the place, was planning on moving. She wasn't a birder herself. She was a rancher and just a great lady to have met on the trip. One of the joys of my trip. And then when I got to the top of the hill, they had caught this Cooper's hawk and banded it, and they let me release it, which was a blast. And it didn't fly very far, and I was able to get this shot. So that was kind of fun. This is a shot of a Cooper's up close. This is in Arizona. This isn't from Wyoming, but you can see just in my view how absolutely stunning that bird is with kind of a blue slate gray, the orange eyes. It's just a great bird. You can't see it in this picture, but down below it is a ground squirrel that it had just caught and flown up in the tree with. Red-tailed hawk, one of our more common raptors. I think they're an undervalued raptor. I've heard people use the phrase, "Oh, it's just a red tail." I think they're amazing. Couple of stories about them, one of which you're probably familiar with, but one which you might not be. Um, when you see a bald eagle in an ad or a movie or a TV show and you hear that fierce war cry, that is not a bald eagle, as you guys know. Bald eagles have kind of a high-pitched chip. Sounds more like something they should be catching than the sound they should be making. So they dub in a red-tailed hawk and that fierce war cry of a red-tailed hawk, which is kind of cool. You may or may not be familiar with it, but in 1951, there was a movie called Distant Drum. And in it, there was a guy that got shoved off a tall building. And as he's falling down toward the ground, looking up at his assailant with his arms and legs flailing, he lets out this massive scream. And we've all seen that scene in 100 movies. But that scream is called the Wilhelm scream. And it has been used since 1951. It's a perfect scream. People pass it around, sound engineers pass it around. And I have heard, but not been able to confirm, that it is the same with the red-tailed hawk scream, that sound engineers just pass around. Well, now I'm sure it's digital, but pass around a tape of the same scream. I'd like to think that's the case, but I do not know. The story that you may not know about red-tailed hawks, excuse me, is Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was elected president in 1952, decided that he wanted to build an interstate highway system. He wanted to do it for two reasons. One, because following World War II, so many Americans were moving from the east to the west, looking for cheap land and a brighter future. And he wanted to build something where about every 5 miles or so, he could have a mile of perfectly straight highway so that he could land planes and bombers on it in case we went to war with Russia. So he did that. It wasn't completed till long after his death. 1994 was when it was completed, 42 years later. But the unintended consequence of building the interstate highway system is that we built perfect habitat for red-tailed hawks. You put out some flat land, you mow it on both sides, so you create a nice area for moles and voles and some small rodents and reptiles. And then the only thing missing were perches. So we built power lines or telephone poles along those highways. And there's just nowhere you can go in the country where you're not looking at red-tailed hawks hanging out on these things. And so they are one of the few birds, and certainly one of the few raptors that is having an explosion of population. And it's a pretty cool thing. This shot here is from my front yard. We have a bird sanctuary, and we have a red-tailed hawk that doesn't come by all the time, but we get to see it once a month or so flying by, and they're just such beautiful birds. I absolutely love them. Another bird that was nearly wiped out by people and then was brought back by people is the peregrine falcon. We nearly lost them because of DDT. Same with the bald eagle and the osprey and the brown pelican. But once we banned DDT, we were able to save the peregrine falcons. And they are now commonly known as urban peregrines. And the reason for that is that you can find them in every major city in the lower 48 states, even up in the Northeast. They are all over. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, peregrine falcons are cliff nesters, and they love to nest in various cliffs. And what do large cities have? Skyscrapers. And what do skyscrapers resemble to a bird? Apparently, they resemble cliffs. And so peregrine falcons nest on skyscrapers. The other thing that big cities have in huge numbers are pigeons. And pigeons are a favorite food of peregrine falcons. So they have an unlimited food source in these towns. And it has gotten to be really cool. Cities are now building nesting boxes for the falcons to try to attract them. It brings in tourists, it entertains the ones that are there anyway. It cuts down on the pigeon population. It appears to be a win for everybody except the peregrine, unfortunately, or I mean, except for the pigeon. This shot that you're looking at is from Torrey Pines. If you're not familiar with it, this is just outside of San Diego in Southern California, and they have some cliffs there right on the beach. As a matter of fact, you park your car and you literally are walking in the sand on the beach, and just about 300 yards apart. Every single year, there are two peregrine falcon nests, but because there's so much food on the beach with the shorebirds and the pigeons and stuff, they don't have a territory problem. And so you can watch two pairs of peregrine falcons on these nests in Torrey Pines. You can watch them from the beach looking up, or you can climb up on a fairly, it's a half-mile hike to go around and get to the top of this little cliff and look down on the nests and on the falcons. And if you ever are afforded the opportunity, it's a pretty cool thing. Another great place to see a large collection of a single species is the Conowinga Dam in Maryland. About 45 minutes northeast of Maryland is the Conowinga Dam. It's on the Susquehanna River. And in the fall, when the shad run, the bald eagles show up. And they show up literally in the hundreds, 200 to 300 of these things in an area the size of maybe 3 or 4 football fields. And these shad go through the dam, and as they do, many of them get killed or knocked unconscious. And so the bald eagles are there just picking up a virtually unlimited source of food, which is just remarkable to watch. Here's a picture of a couple of juveniles doing battle. You can't see it, but the lower one has a shad in its talons. And so you'll see adults battling, you'll see juveniles battling. You got some double-crested cormorants that are down there, and the eagles will try to steal the fish right from the cormorant's mouth, and which is a pretty neat thing to see. But here you can see this is a bald eagle having grabbed a shad, and man, there is something so amazing about that to see. They are a remarkable bird to watch, whether you're a big fan of raptors or not. Another great place for a collection of raptors is Sebastian Inlet, which is on the east coast of Florida, about 45 minutes north of Vero Beach. And when the mullet, and you can see the mullet right there, when the mullet run in Sebastian Inlet, dozens of osprey collect, and they're fishing all day long. And I've not seen them pull 3 out, but friends have sent me photographs. I have seen them pull out 2 mullet at a time. And again, it's an almost unlimited source of food. There's no battles between the osprey. They just dive down, take what they want, eat it, and off they go. Ospreys may be the coolest of all the raptors. Of course, that's debatable. But my theory behind it, my reasons behind it are this. Number one, they have a pure sushi diet. I understand there are outliers, but 99.9% of what osprey eat are sushi, which is my favorite food. They are the only raptor in the world. They're actually the only bird in the world that carries a lunch with it when it migrates. So, like all birds that migrate, ospreys will fatten up as much as they can, sometimes doubling their body weight. Their organs will shrink or even disappear. And so they prepare themselves for what many are a 650-mile nonstop flight over the Gulf of Mexico. Osprey are the one bird, the last thing they do before they take off is grab a fish and flip it head first, which osprey always do. And then as they're making that long flight, they just reach down and grab a bite. And it helps them make it across the Gulf of Mexico. They are also unique among the raptors and all other birds that the large majority of osprey, when they migrate down to southern Mexico or Central or South America, they do not return 6 months later in a normal migratory pattern. They wait and come back in 18 months. They skip that first return. And scientists and ornithologists are they're at odds as to why that occurs. They don't have a definitive answer for it yet, and they're studying it now, and hopefully they'll find one. But it's an amazing thing. But when that cycle comes around the second time, without missing a beat, they head right back to the same lake or beach side or wherever they were. They remember that for the 18 months. It's implanted in their brain in some way, and they come, and then for the rest of their lives, barring injury or illness, they're back on the same cycle that all osprey are. They are the only diving osprey. Bald eagles, for example, are surface hunters. They're just grabbing things off the surface or an inch or two below. Osprey can dive up to 2.5 feet deep successfully. And the reason for that is they are the lone raptor whose eyes adjust for refraction. So anybody who's ever gone to a creek or whatever as a kid and tried to spearfish a trout or something, you realize that they're not where you think they are when you're looking through clear water. Ospreys actually their eyes do adjust for that refraction. And so they are able to drop down that 2.5 feet deep, sometimes completely submersed, and then get themselves back up and airlift. And it's kind of fun because they have the same pattern. If they go underwater, they come to the top, they look around. I guess they're looking for predators or bald eagles or whatever it is. Then they flap those wings 2 or 3 times, get a little lift. And then once they're up in the air, they flip that fish head first. And then at about 20, 30 feet away, they give themselves a shake like a dog that just went through the sprinklers, get rid of the excess water, and then they're off to where they're going to go eat. This is another return to yellow. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is a different osprey. This is an osprey from my backyard. Does not look happy at all at my looking up at him, but just a gorgeous bird, gorgeous eyes. This is one back down in Sebastian that was cleaning itself and was beautiful to watch. Great gray owl. This is at Yellowstone National Park, and it was about minus 25 degrees. And what that means, by the way, if you're a photographer and you're in Yellowstone and it's minus 25, is that you are cold because you've got to have the windows down and no heater on. Because if you don't, when you open the car door, your camera fogs up and you'll lose your shot. And so on this particular day, it was minus 25 degrees. It was snowing. I was the only one in the park other than the rangers and the wolf patrol people. And it was a ranger who stopped and asked what I was doing there in that kind of weather. And I told him looking for a great gray. And he put me on it, which was great, which is so kind and generous. And so I got to find this great gray and spent about 2 hours watching it. I got to watch it hunt 3 times. And if you don't know, great grays will drop right down into the snow. They can hear a mole or a vole or a mouse up to 2 feet down in the snow. And I got to watch it try that 3 times and be successful in its hunt twice, which was pretty cool. I also saw some great grays up at Sax-Sim Bog, if you've been up there, and that's the coldest I've ever been. It was minus 36 degrees, but it is a spectacular place to find owls. These are some great horns, some fledges, but in a day, if you're lucky at Sax-Sim Bog and you're looking for owls, you can find a great gray, a boreal, a snowy, a northern hawk, a northern saw-whet, a barred, and a great horned. It is a bonanza of owls in one location. So well worth it if you ever get a chance. People have asked me, in addition to the 53, did I chase rarities? And the answer is yes. I do keep lists. I'm not obsessive about it, but I do like to keep them. I will chase rarities, but only raptors. This is a roadside hawk that came up from somewhere, probably Mexico, and was in Texas for a few weeks, and was regularly spotted and then was gone. I don't know if it was predated or went back over the border or whatever happened, but it was pretty cool to see. Texas also during this process had a bat falcon, the first one that had been spotted in the States in about 25 years, that again came over the border and was reliable for a number of weeks, right around the first of the year back in 22. And so I got to see that a handful of times. And this, by the way, coming up is by far the worst photo, but it's the best of the ones that I got. The Stellar Sea Eagle, you may have heard about that, came across the Bering Strait into Alaska, somehow went down to Texas, then made its way up into the Northeast. And 2 winters in a row, it was seen in Maine at a place called Aroostook. And this particular shot, it was a mile away. That's how far it is. And you can't tell in the picture, but if you look, that is a Canada goose that this Sea Eagle took out. And that bird that's looking at it is not a crow. That's a bald eagle. These birds are about 1.5 times the size of a bald eagle, and they are by far the dominant bird. They have not been back in 2 winters, but they were spotted this year in Newfoundland and Labrador up in Canada, which was the pattern before, and then it would drop down into Maine, but it didn't do that this winter. So hopefully it will next winter. But if you ever get a chance to see it, it is an awe-inspiring bird. It is one of the 3 biggest raptors in the world. It is massive, and it is a thrill to see even from a mile away. Northern hawk owl, this one is on the cover of my book. It's the last one of the 53 that I got. They're not easy to find because there's not a lot of them. And they're also ghosted in eBird, if you're familiar with that. Some of the raptors, they will not give exact locations. They just give a big purple block that's, the size of a county. It doesn't help you find it. And they do that because the birds are poached. And northern hawk owls are among those. But I got a call from somebody who said there was a northern hawk owl in Wise River, Montana. And I had just been there the week before, but jumped on a bird and went to look for it. I allowed myself 4 days to find it. And the first afternoon I got there, I thought, well, I'll just drive around a little bit and get the lay of the land. And I did that. And the first dirt road I turned down, which actually was before I even got to the little town, I went down this dirt road about a mile. There were 2 cars on the side of the road. And since you guys are all birders, you know that if you see some cars on the side of the road like that, either somebody's broken down or they're on a bird. So I pulled up, and sure enough, they were on this northern hawk owl, which was across this 15-foot dirt road and up on top of a power pole that no longer had any lines to it. It was just there. And I got to watch it for a while that night. And then I went back early the next morning at dawn, and it was there again. Nobody else was there, but the bird was there in the exact same place. And this was a spiritual thing for me. I got to watch it for 2 hours by myself, and went down and hunted a couple times. This shot is from one of those hunts. And then it came back up to that pole. And then at about the 2 hour mark, it dropped down the pole until it got about 1.5 feet off the ground. And then it turned 90 degrees and came straight at me. I'm not an easy guy to miss for a raptor. I mean, I'm 6 foot, 200 plus pounds, and I'd been there for 2 hours, so it absolutely knew I was there. But as it went by, it brushed my left leg with its left wing. And then it took off into the prairie, and I never saw it again. I went back the next 2 days. I looked all over. I never found it again. I don't know. I choose to take it as a spiritual moment. I choose to think that the bird did it on purpose for whatever reason. I understand that may sound silly to some, but it was, for me, a highlight of the trip, which is why I wound up putting this thing on the cover of the book, Raptor Quest. Raptor Quest covers all 53 of the birds, and then there's about 15 or 20 essays that are scattered throughout those chapters. If you're interested, you can find it on Amazon. But this was a pretty exciting thing for me to do, and it was a thrill, and it opened me up to some other things. I'll share 2 quick ones with you, and then do a Q&A. One is I'm writing a new book called Why We Love Birds, 52 Birders on Birding. And for this book, I have interviewed, I've interviewed 51 so far. I have one more coming up Thursday, but I will have interviewed 52 birders. And many of them are people you know or know of, Chris Cooper and Greg Miller and Ken Kaufman and Cy Montgomery, and just a ton of great and well-known and accomplished birders and authors. And I've asked them a series of questions and written a chapter on each of them. Recently signed with a New York publisher, so they're going to wrap up the book and get it out. This isn't the cover. I just played with that to have something to put up here. But this has been a thrill to work on. And this project, which is a podcast called Naturally Scott. And Greg Miller was my first guest, and then Laura Erickson. This week I interviewed Chris Cooper and Cy Montgomery. And if you get a chance, by the way, on this, I'd love for you to go to YouTube and click subscriber. It's a big help if I can get some people to subscribe to it. But I got to tell you, it's a blast doing these things. I have so much fun. They're 45 minutes to an hour. It's a one-on-one interview with the guest, and we just run all over. We talk about all kinds of stuff. And I believe if you listen to it, you'll enjoy it. The guests are so fascinating, and I try to stay out of their way. And that's just a very cool thing. So I do not doctor my photos. I will crop them. I will play a little bit with the color, but that's it. If there's a power line in front of the bird, I don't take it out. Other people do, and that's fine. Everybody has their own rules. This is the single exception. This ferruginous hawk is in Pinnacles National Park in California. And that is a ferruginous. That is the power beam that it was on in the sky behind it and the yellow sign. The only difference is that in real life, that sign says high voltage, and I change it to thank you because that is what I want to say when we get to the end of this. I so appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. And as Mary mentioned earlier, I'd be a fool not to thank my wife, who has made all of my travels and my hobbies a reality and a blessing. So that's where we are. And now I would be absolutely honored to answer any and all questions that you guys might have.
Well, thank you, Scott. That was wonderful. Hey, everybody, you can unmute yourself and put yourself back on video. If you have a question, raise your hand. I wonder, Scott, if we did something like had the ferruginous hawk move to the side, and then people could have a gallery view of each other, and then if they raise their hand or whatever, you could see them.
We could do that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm definitely going to promote your new podcast. I'll put it on our social media.
Oh, thank you, Sue. I got to tell you, it is just so thrilling for me. This week coming up, I'm interviewing Wayne Klockner, who's the president of the American Birding Association. He's also a guest in the book I'm working on, but Elizabeth Gray, the president of the Audubon Society, is one of my upcoming guests. It's just, I'm getting to meet and talk to all these different people and have them down to the house if they can and hang out with them and get to know them a little bit. Chris Cooper, who most of you guys know, was the blackbirder in the incident in Central Park right at the beginning of COVID, and such a generous and kind man. I've really enjoyed getting to know him. And so, yeah, if you would do that, that'd be great, because every time we get, there's no money in it. It's no cost to anybody, and I don't make any money. But the more subscribers I get, the more guests, are willing to come on and be a part of the program. So that is my shameless pitch. Buy the book or not, that's fine. But if you can subscribe to YouTube or Spotify, I would be very grateful for that. Thank you.
Definitely, yeah.
Did we get the link to your YouTube channel?
Naturally Scott is the name of the YouTube channel.
Okay.
One word, Naturally Scott.
All right, we'll find it.
Hey, Julie, maybe you want to let him know about the peregrine falcons and the osprey in this area, because we have quite a few of osprey, at least.
Yeah, we have the highest population of nesting osprey on Presque Isle State Park that we've ever had, I think, with 5 active nests. Correct, everyone? And the peregrine falcons, I'm not quite sure.
So the nests that you have, it's the middle of August, so they've all fledged, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how many fledged out of the 5 nests?
I don't. We have a gentleman named Jamie Hill, who is our osprey monitor, and he will do a tally if he hasn't done so already. I just haven't read it yet if he's done it, but he does them all in Erie County and Crawford County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. They're just such, we live on a lake, and probably 3 times a week, I'll get to watch an osprey dive into our little cove right out by our dock and pull a fish out. And I don't care how many times I've seen it. It is just thrilling.
Yeah, he has one on his property as well. And what's kind of interesting about the osprey nesting on Presque Isle is that we had a platform provided on the park maybe 30 years ago, and they never came to it. And now they are in platforms and natural nests and trees, if I'm not mistaken. So
Well,
they finally came.
osprey are opportunistic nesters. I mean, I've seen reports where they've nested in a crane that sat unused for the spring,
Wow.
lights at football fields, at high schools, and just all over. If they can find a place to build that big old giant nest, they'll build it. So it's pretty fun to watch.
I did have a question about when you're finding your birds. Would you say the majority of the time they're in their breeding habitats as opposed to like on a migratory pathway that you're catching
No,
them on migration?
no, it's not mixed up. I mean, it is mixed up.
Oh, okay.
As it turns out, I'm not a giant fan of hawk watches.
Okay.
So I went to 6 or 8 of them on this venture, but it's just not for me to sit
Mhm.
and look at a pinprick and
Right?
decide and count wing beats and see if it's a Sharpie or a Cooper's. It doesn't
Believe
work.
me, I know.
But for example, I've gotten to know Pete Dunn pretty well on this, and he has spent thousands of hours at hawk watches.
Yes.
And that's probably where they'll find him one day, face down in the dirt at a hawk watch.
Yeah.
He absolutely loves it. And I've talked to him, I said, Pete, I don't get it. You're looking at a black dot.
It's
You
very
know,
addictive. It's very addictive.
it seems to be the people I've met that go seem to absolutely love it and be passionate about it. It becomes a social thing.
Yeah.
They're there with the same people every day. So I get it. I'm not saying people are fools for doing it. It's, everybody's got their thing. That's just not for me.
What would be a hawk watch site near where you live in South Carolina? I mean,
Florida.
oh, down in Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
For fall migration, do you think?
Yes.
Okay, for fall migration. Yeah.
I have a question for you. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can, Charles.
Okay, grand. Thank you, Scott. I believe at one point during the presentation, you said that you had taken a picture of an owl at night. And I was just curious as to how you did that. Because I have tried to take a picture sort of slightly after sunset, and I normally do during the day. I will use fill flash, which is uh, 0.7 stops under, but it's really just a fill so that you don't get the harsh line. But yeah, so. Did I hear you right? And if so, like, what's the technology that you use to do that?
You're going to be disappointed because I'm not going to help you. Not because I refuse to, but because I can't. So I don't normally shoot at night. I don't use flash. I don't like to use flash on the birds. I know that everybody has a different view on that. But for me, I don't. And I don't like tripods. I like to keep moving.
Sure.
So the picture that you're seeing was a bird that was outside a National Park Service building where there were floodlights on one side of the
Ah,
building, and it cast a light on the bird, so I was able to. And
okay.
I think I can hold steady down to about 1/20th of a second, and so that's where I was, and so that's what you saw. Uh,
Okay, good.
the
Cool.
bird just happened to alight on a branch, and it was
Mhm.
great because it wasn't a harsh direct light. It was an indirect light. I mean, you would have paid to have that lighting. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's it. That's why you didn't see
Okay.
any other pictures of birds of night
All right. Well,
at
thank you.
night
Yeah.
for me. Yeah. Sorry, I can't help you more. Obviously, there are a lot of people that are experts of shooting, wildlife at night. And they're using flash and they're using tripods and doing different things. It's just
That's fine. Yeah.
I
If
don't.
you don't do it, you don't need to you don't need to go on. So thanks.
I have a question, Scott.
Sure.
On average, have you ever calculated how much time did you spend per bird for this Raptor quest?
No, but certainly the bird I spent the most time on was the hook-billed kite. If I added up those hours of looking, there would be well over 100 looking for that bird. It was 4 different trips down to Texas to try to find that. That's a Benson State Park in southeastern Texas is the best place to find them. I just had bad luck for 3.5 trips. And by the way, I nearly had bad luck on the fourth trip. I was walking back to the car to drive to the airport, catch a flight home, and try to explain to my wife why I needed to make a fifth trip to Texas to find one bloody bird. And literally on the hike back, it's about a 1.5 mile hike. They have a tram, but I was walking, and a hook-billed came by,
Oh my
as
gosh.
as if it was saying, "Okay, you know what? You've tried hard enough. Here we go." Obviously, a lot of the birds are easy to find. You know, the ospreys and the bald eagles and the turkey and black vultures and different things are pretty simple to find. Red-tailed hawks, but it's mostly the owls that are tough. The only non-owls that were really tough for me were the gyrfalcon and the hook-billed kite. And other than that, the ones I struggled with were the owls. You know, they're just not easy to find. You know, the nighttime owls. Um, and that's where again I was so blessed to have people help me. You know, to have people take the time to help me out. Whereas like a boreal owl or a great gray or something that's a diurnal owl, those are not easy, but much easier to find. But a northern saw-whet, and I'll tell you what, this book that I'm writing that I mentioned, the Why We Love Birding, 52 birders, all prominent, and one of the questions that I've asked every one of them is, do you have a nemesis bird? And for the ones that do, the overwhelming nemesis bird is a raptor. It is amazing how many of these people have been birding for 50 plus years and have not seen all 53 of these raptors. Just because if you're not going specifically to look for them, you don't stumble on them. You know, you don't trip over them like a robin. And so I was fortunate to work with some experts and fortunate to find some on my own.
Yeah. I know you said that you're not really a serious lister, but do you record passerines and shorebirds on this trek or do you not? Just
I
for
did on that trek, but that's 2 years old now. To be honest with you now, I eBird if I see a lifer or a raptor. I will do an incidental on every raptor I see, not counting vultures. But I will do an incidental. Now tomorrow I'm going out on an 11-hour pelagic trip, and so there'll be some serious listing there. I'm hoping to pick up 2 or 3 lifers while I'm out there. But they've got a list master. They've got all the rules for eBird pelagic trips that they're following. So I've given them my name, and I'll go ahead and take those. And when I travel out of the country and I'm seeing a lot of new birds, then I'll list everything. But like in my own backyard, if I sit and watch, I don't do an eBird list every time I'm out there watching. And I watch frequently. I mean, if I'm home, I will sit on the front porch for a couple hours and watch the bird sanctuary. But I don't report it anymore. And again, these 52 people I interviewed, I would say a third of them are non-listers. They just don't listen. I wouldn't have guessed that when I started the project, but it turns out that's the case. They think it's a distraction or it's a principled issue or whatever it might be. And then again, one of the guys that I interviewed is John Fitzpatrick, who headed up Cornell for 29 years, and he's the one who headed up the development teams that brought us eBird and Merlin. So it runs a pretty wide gap.
Any other questions? No, if there are none, then we're going to say thank you very much to Scott. This was really, really fun, and the images
Wonderful.
were just
It's
Beautiful
wonderful.
photographs. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You guys are great.
Amazing.
And I have to tell you, I don't know how many of these I've given. Like I said, maybe 6 a month. Not always in the summer that many, because like you guys, a lot of groups shut down. But I've been doing it for 2 years. This is the first one I've done where nobody asked me what camera equipment I use. So I can no longer say when somebody asks me what the camera equipment is, okay, you've kept the streak going. You guys are the first ones. So and with
That aside, actually, when you mentioned the Conowingo Dam, I
yes.
barely refrained myself from saying, beside the Eagle, it's the best place to see the latest and greatest in photo equipment.
Oh my goodness. It's like having B&H photo. You've been then, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So you've lined up
So,
along that short chain link
I
fence.
did not line up. I always stayed sort of behind, very respectful. I did not want to be responsible for breaking a $50,000 setup, but
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of great gear that when I go early and I just set up a lawn chair and bring my lunch basket, and I'll sit there for 8 or 10 hours and just watch them all day long. It's a treat. I'm glad to know you've been.
Yeah.
but if
Um,
somebody holds up that place, they'll come away with millions.
yes, they will. Yes, they will.
so you're not going to keep us in suspense. You're going to tell us what kind of gear you use and why.
Oh, I wasn't trying to prompt that, but sure, I will. I carry two Sonys. I carry a Sony A1 with a 200/600, and I carry a Sony A9 II with a 70-200. So my range is 70-600. And because I do a lot, one of the books I'm writing is a book on marine mammals. So tomorrow, while ostensibly it's a birding trip, I'll also be looking for marine mammals. And a lot of times, if I've got just a 200/600, I can't get the whole whale or the whole dolphin in the shot. We went to Africa a few months ago. That's where that dark shanting goshawk is from. And you get that from a distance with the big one, and then you get a lion walking up to the Jeep. You've got to have something smaller. My wife says I carry a pistol and a rifle,
Yeah.
so that's what I normally do.
Are you using binoculars at all?
Not often. I used to, and now sometimes even if I just bring a single camera, I don't always bring binoculars.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to swing something up, I might as well swing the camera
Right.
in case I see something I can shoot it. And tomorrow's different because it's a pelagic trip, so I'll wear a double harness. I left one camera at home, and I'll bring binoculars and one camera. Um, but I do evaluate on each trip that I go to, whatever it is I'm trying to do, because obviously it makes a difference. If you're fortunate to have a little bit of gear, you want to make sure you have the right gear. So there you go.
Right.
I'm still going to say you guys broke the streak though, because I had to bring it up. Well, thank you to everybody. This has been a treat for me. I truly, truly, truly enjoy it. And
Thank you,
if
Scott.
anybody has any follow-up questions, and oftentimes people do, they don't think of them until later. They're a little bit shy. It's simply scott@naturallyscott.com, and you are welcome to send me a note about locations or birds or equipment or books or any. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Lisa. And I am happy to answer those. I look forward to answering those emails. It is a treat for me. It is the interaction with the clubs that makes this so special.
Excellent.
So everybody have a great night. Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
Friday, and I'll
Thank you.
think of you tomorrow when I'm chasing birds and mammals.
Sounds good.
Thanks for
Take care
joining,
now.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.